Hello, everyone, and welcome to Creativity Worth Expressing. Today, I'm with a special guest, Mark Salzwedel. Mark, thank you for being here today.
No problem. Nice to meet you, Ryan.
It's always great to have creatives here from all over the world, and you are coming from
Brooklyn, New York.
awesome, Brooklyn. Thank you for being here. To get started, can you introduce your art form to the listeners?
Sure. Um, I started writing stories and music when I was 9 years old. I've been at it for many decades, but I haven't started actually publishing and performing my work until just the last few years. I got a big kick in the pants, I think, during the COVID epidemic. So, in the past 2 years, since then, I've published a novel, science fiction, uh, mostly a gay cast, and it's sort of a thriller, psychological thriller called The Lever, and that's been doing pretty well lately. I had a big boost in June when it was picked as one of four novels as part of the Pride bundle. So that's going out to a bunch of people that were donating to a cause.
Okay, and you mentioned that you also do music.
To do music as well. I have one more novel to show you.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
this one came out just in April. This is The Miraculous Life of Rupert Rocket. This one is more fantasy. It's sort of a urban fantasy or magical realism style novel, and I took inspiration from the Brothers Grimm fairy tale Sleeping Beauty, and the main character Rupert, his, his family has been blessed by one Irish fairy and cursed by another, so he has very chaotic luck. And
Oh.
I also have music. This is from an opera that I wrote. The voices in it are just synthesized voices, so they're not real singers, but you get a sense of the music at least. This is a duet between one of the three evil sorcerers and the star woman from their castle that they have turned into a fortune teller. So here we go. So that's a duet from my opera, The Repugnant Tap.
Well, thank you. That was excellent.
I have different styles of music as well. Uh, I also have uh, jazz, which one's called Takeoff Delay. It's sort of a metaphor that when you have a lover who having trouble committing, uh, forcing you to sort of be like a air traffic controller.
Mhm.
That gives it a little bit of taste of it.
Thank you so much for sharing your music. And I would
Mm-hmm.
like to ask you, before you start to sit down and write your music, where do you find the inspiration to actually start it?
I know you're very interested in creativity and what sparks creativity. I guess when I was hearing that, I was thinking about how both I have a very strong uh, emphasis on learning. So I'm always trying to learn something every day. And I also got used to when I was growing up the idea of challenging myself all the time because a lot of time the curriculum was not very challenging. So I had to figure out ways to challenge myself. And so those two things I think most often do it. So like for music, a lot of times I hadn't written any jazz pieces yet, and I was interested in it. So I had to study what the different chord structures were, the different rhythmic patterns, the different instrumentation, things like that. And then I just tried to experiment with it, and I came up with some words that I'll actually share with you that sort of drove it. Uh, it's like we're at an airport, baby. I waited at the gate, was ready to roll. You said we'd be taking a flight together, but you stuck me in the tower working traffic control. So sometimes the words start to suggest the music. Sometimes the music comes first and the words come later. But it's usually when I'm trying to, I would say, challenge myself and do something new. I do that with my fiction as well. When I wrote The Miraculous Life of Rupert Rocket, I was experimenting with what would American style magical realism be like. And the themes of traditional magical realism are always about colonialism in Latin America. But here, I'm trying to look more at the topics of how we deal with change and what it means to the significance of found families.
How would you say that your creativity has evolved over time? And during this time of evolution or growth, what have you learned along the way?
I would say that we have developed is now I don't feel like I need to plan as much in advance. I mean, when I write a novel, for instance, I'll do some outlining, but I won't outline the whole plot. I'll just outline maybe the first half of it or less, and then just see where the writing takes me sometimes. I'll have some vague idea of where it's going to end up, so I have a sense of the pacing. But other than that, I just try to wait for inspiration. When I was working on my first sci-fi space opera trilogy called Chronicles of Bauble, one of the things that happened in the first book was that I was writing along and it had a pretty basic plot with the captain of the ship was the good guy, if a little conflicted, because he knew he was going to die soon of cancer. And the military leader aboard the ship, who had an agenda counter to what the captain's was, thought good versus evil, fine. By about the fourth or fifth chapter, I had a sort of a side character who was a biochemist, a Korean biochemist, who demanded more attention, basically. She said, I'm going to deal with this situation. She was very bossy. So she just, I just developed a backstory for her where she had this very odd habit. Her father had been a doctor and she had been stealing drugs from his bag to use on boys she was interested in and put them into sort of like hypnotic states so she could manipulate them. That was her kink. And so that sort of gets in the way when that kink sort of rises to the surface again after, years on a very long star journey. So that added another element to the plot balance. Had a sort of a morally gray character. She wanted to do well, but she had this sort of hang up.
Something that I'm loving about this interview is how you have spoken about challenging yourself when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
music, how you need to learn like the patterns for jazz and for music, how you have to make a sub character and make another plot for that person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my question now is, If you are, let's say, in a place where it's hard to find inspiration to write or to find the right patterns for the music, do you have any routines or um, any any habits that you do that help you put you back on track?
Uh, well, I'm always working on something, Ryan. So I find that sometimes um, one project will spring out of another one. So, for instance, my book, Miraculous Life of Rupert Rocket, um, we were worried that people were going to think that was a biography. So the editor and I worked out a subtitle that says "A Novel of the Fae" by Mark Salzwedel, and I just thought, oh, that's just clarifying the audience for the book. That's
Mhm.
fine. I went to the Internet Speculative Fiction Database to keep uh, records of all the um, science fiction, fantasy, and horror authors. It's all speculative fiction. And they had registered my book, my novel, as being the first in a series, novels of the Fae, basically. And so I thought, maybe I could write another novel of the Fae. And the formula I used with this book was that I thought of a fairy tale uh, that I could use as inspiration. So I decided instead of Irish fairies this time, I was going to come up with Italian fairies. So I looked
Okay.
back into the 14th century, and there was some Italian fairy tales. One called Constanza, uh, and it's a story of the youngest of four princesses. The first princess got married off and got part of the kingdom. The second princess got married off and got another part of the kingdom. The third princess got married off and got part of the kingdom that she had to take as give up as a dowry. By the time the fourth daughter came along, Costanza, there was no more of the kingdom that she could give as a dowry. So instead of sending her to a prince or a king, they said, "Well, why don't you just marry this nice noble person?" And uh, she was not very happy about that because her sisters had done much better in life. Um, and so she ran off and was not very safe for a woman to be traveling alone at that time. So she dressed as a man. And eventually she came back to her father as a man with a solution to some of his problems, and it goes on from there. But basically, I took that fairy tale and thought, well, what would it be like if just the Costanza character was a transsexual man? And I felt again challenge myself with a character I'd never written before, a trans man. What if a trans man met a network of organized crime that was run by an ancient Italian fairies who was willing to give him some money to pay for his transition surgery, and then they expected him to do some illegal stuff to pay them back. That was the novel I'm working on now. It's sort of a follow up to the first one so that I can have a second novel of the Fae. So sometimes it comes from existing work. A lot of times, I guess, as far as a practice, I just try to read a lot, go out in nature. That sometimes inspires me. Talk to people from different backgrounds, and they give me ideas. Um, I consume films and everything else, and get inspiration from just about anything. Um, I was walking in Prospect Park near me just a little while ago, uh, and saw a chipmunk scurrying past uh, me on the path. He stopped for a second and looked at me to decide if I was dangerous or not, I guess, and then he just skittered off. And I thought, well, I've been wanting to make a video game for a while and to write a video game design. And so started putting some of my notes down, and it became Prospect Park Squirrel Scramble, where each player plays a squirrel trying to get enough nuts and seeds catched near its nest before the first snow. and you have to worry about chipmunks that steal from their catches, protect their catches and things like that. So uh, that was part of what happened in that case. It was just seeing a chipmunk. That was what my mind started to turn on.
Why is creativity worth expressing for you?
I think to a certain extent, it sort of keeps my mind uh, focused on what's possible and less on any current troubles I may be facing. So it has a sort of a therapeutic aspect to it. Um, it has an element of self-expression. A lot of times, the themes that I use when I write something uh, often will be a way I can express my ideas. And I think to a certain extent also, uh, when you don't have any children, sometimes you think about the idea of a legacy
Mm.
and you hope maybe that your creative work will live beyond you, mean that you're remembered in some way. And so all of those things, I think, figure into what I get out of it.
That's very deep. Thank you.
Mhm.
Now, are there any other creatives out there, artists, writers, whom you recommend we keep an eye on?
New ones? Um,
Upcoming, anyone?
there, I've sort of developed a friendship on social media with creator Asher Quasar.
Okay.
Uh, he's he's a trans man that did a sensitivity read for me, and he has a new novel out that talks about characters that are ancient gay vampires. So, so I think that's very clever. Um, there's a new novel that just came out uh, from my publishing house that I work for, Rebel Satori Press, um, and it's called The Switch by April McLeod. She lives in upstate New York here, and she has a really interesting idea. Um, she's thinking about time in the future when people sometimes take on bionic models that basically become cybernetic people. Um, and people hop from one body to another. And she's on an adventure discovery to try to find where her brother has gone, who has hopped several bodies, and trying to track him down. So it has that sort of neat science fiction angle that you don't hear too often. So that's kind of unique as well.
Sounds cool. And last question, where can people find your work?
Well, like I said, I have a website of my own called marksalzwedel.com. Very easy to remember. marksalzwedel.com. Or my novels, at least, are all in one place uh, at Rebel Satori Press. So that's Rebel Satori, all one word, REBELSATORI.com, under their Queer Space imprint. Or at SoundCloud, my music is under the profile Taoist Toast, which is spelled TaoistToast, all one word.
Excellent. So for those who are watching Creativity Worth Expressing, go check out the books of Mark Salzwedel, his websites, and definitely check out his music. And to Mark, thank you for being here as a guest on Creativity Worth Expressing.
Thank you, Ryan.